You know, it doesn't happen often enough for me. Finding a game I could just pick up and play. Something like the original Legend of Zelda, Mario Kart, or even Battlefront 2. My list of these games as a whole is relatively small, but I think I finally found a title I could add to it. That game is Geometry Wars Retro Evolved. This is what you would call a shoot-'em-up style arcade game, where the goal is to rack up as many points as you possibly can and achieve new high scores. While doing this, you'll be trying to avoid deathly geometrical shapes that want nothing more than to have you dead, hence the name Geometry Wars. At its core, it's an arcade game, almost as if they never faded out of mass popularity and continued to evolve, hence the subtitle, Retro Evolved. To be honest, I like this game. It's fun to play, addicting, and really does everything I'd want it to. The only drawback, in my opinion, are the terrible, ungodly menus I have to look at before even starting a game. It's almost as if there was an alternate universe where I'd become a game developer for some insane reason and created these hideous menus. And if that were the case, I would have to find them. I would have to put an end to this. The only way I can really think to do something like this would be to create some sort of interdimensional time travel thingy. Only problem is, I have no clue where to start. Well, aside from getting off track and trying to murder myself from another universe, I still have a game to cover. And with that, I have the geometrical murder shapes I mentioned earlier. You remember those things in Pac-Man that chased you through the map and had names like Blinky, Inky, Pinky, and Clyde? Well, in Geometry Wars, they don't have that. But I think I might just be able to help. Let's see, we could try naming them to their corresponding shapes. Something like Quadrilatty with a quadrilatty inside, circly, small circly, a quadrilatty with an X going through it, small quadrilatty with an X going through it that also swerves, triangular evolution, racial pinwheel, scrotum ripper, and for this one, let's call him Joe. And of course, all these shapes have purposes too, like murdering the player. Now, each shape has a different way of achieving this. We'll start with the quadrilatty. The main traits of the quadrilatty are as stated. It can make motions with itself, like that. It tends to spawn around the play area, and can spawn a circle around the player. It also is able to spawn in large masses from each corner of the play area at once, effectively surrounding the player. It may also be worth mentioning it chases you, constantly. Unlike the racial pinwheel, where all it does is move and spin around the map. It's pretty simple. What you want to know it isn't simple, and is a whole 2 levels more difficult than the racial pinwheel? The quadrilatty with the quadrilatty inside. Things are getting serious. You see, this one follows you and avoids your bullets. Pretty annoying, right? Well, there's still ways to circumvent this. The best way to do so would be to create a barrier with your laser bolt things and trap them alongside a wall or corner, making it technically impossible for them to escape. Other than that, the quadrilatty with the quadrilatty inside is mostly the same as the quadrilatty. Now, that's all well and good, but you'll have to employ a different technique to stand a fighting chance against the quadrilatty with an X going through it. Now, this one is largely the same as the quadrilatty at its base, except for when you shoot it, this one splits off into 3 small quadrilatties with an X going through it that also swerve. Yeah, I got a problem with these guys. It's like I've been blacklisted by a bunch of PGR4 players. They must have it in for me. It's bad enough when they try surrounding the player tactic, and don't even mention when they start spawning in masses from all the corners. These things are freaking ruthless. And that's not even it. Did I mention when you shoot them, they break off in the bright pink alcoholics? And sure, alcoholics might be bad, but unless you have at least some experience in Geometry Wars, Triangular Evolution is going to be the latest and greatest when it comes to waking up from level 3 REM sleep. Yeah, I wouldn't say they're as difficult as quadrilatty with an X going through it, but instead it would be somewhere above the quadrilatty with a quadrilatty inside. It's not like it's spawning around you like some of the other shapes, it instead opts for spawning in ultramasses, as I like to refer to them as, from each of the corners. The triangular manpower here is immense, and that's where that little thing I call experience likes to come in, because you're going to need it to take on Triangular Evolution. Circly. Yeah, this one's not gonna stick. We need a new name. How about Cirque? Or no, Circadelic maybe? Yeah, you know what? I kinda like that one. Circadelic it is. And hey, isn't it convenient that Circadelic happens to be a circle? A very consumptuous, so let's just call it a black hole. A black hole. We all know what these things do, right? You shoot it and it starts sucking everything you love into it. See, basic biology. And it happens to be just that in Geometry Wars as well. Hey, convenient, right? The only difference is instead of sucking everything you love into it, it sucks everything you hate into it, including yourself. But there's a catch. You see, it won't take everything you hate away from you. In fact, if you let it take too much of what you hate from you, in this case the murderous shapes, it'll explode and leave what I would refer to as past regrets. Things you should have killed, but didn't. These will chase you and try to kill you. This may also be called a midlife crisis. Midlife crises and all aside, I'd like to talk about the scrotum ripper, something many like to call a shape, and something I can only describe as a scrotum ripper. The scrotum ripper is more or less made up of a combination of shapes than a shape in and of itself, which when combined produces the result of a scrotum ripper. This combination of shapes can be extremely dangerous if you are not careful with where you move. This is because a scrotum ripper has a body of that of a snake, which can only be harmed from the head, not the body, making actually taking a lot of these things on at once somewhat challenging. And last but not least, because least is reserved for the quadrility with an X going through it, we have Joe, otherwise known as the bucket that has a bounty on my head, has me blacklisted, and will do anything to make me quit. I don't like this guy, and most other people would agree. Here's why. Joe only spawns around the play area, and in small numbers at that, usually only 1 to 4 of them depending on how long you've been playing for. The attack method of Joe consists of lining up to the player and charging in the player's direction. It also uses shields that will block your lasers from landing a hit. From this attack, the people from the Geometry Wars community have actually come up with their own nickname for this thing. That name is Charger. I suppose that makes all the characters. Well, all except for one. The player. You. The one who controls what happens as long as you have the skills necessary. It's you against an army. They attack, you defend with one of these. Left stick the move, right stick the shoot. Left or right triggers to use a bomb. Not even my toaster has a control scheme this simple. That's code for I shouldn't have to tell you how the controls work. Anyway, the important part of the player's character are the power-ups and how you can gain them, which rely on points you get through taking out enemies. Once you hit a certain amount of points, you'll either get a rapid-fire power-up or a shotgun-style power-up, and these two will alternate once you get one or the other. These will also aid you in getting multipliers, which will then aid you in getting a higher score, the ultimate goal of this game, and the one that's kept people playing for years after its release. For as popular as the game may have become, it doesn't mean that its release was anything special. If anything, it was unexpected, and was the most arcade any of the Xbox Live Arcade games got. Not to mention, there weren't any other games on the Xbox Live Arcade at the time quite like this one. A twin-stick shooter with retro neon-style graphics that would immerse you into the game and not let you go. Like the graphics, the soundtrack itself is certainly mesmerizing, immersive, and would not risk skipping a beat even once, no matter the lag or slowdown. And even though the graphics are something to behold, it doesn't mean it's the only thing that's going to keep your attention. The gameplay is more than satisfying and is only proven by its predecessor on the original Xbox as an Easter egg in the game PGR2. The Easter egg / minigame in PGR2 is mainly just a simpler version of Retro Evolved with minor differences, and less, glow. It was also quite popular among the PGR community, generating a lot of popularity and setting the foundation of what would become Retro Evolved. And I mean, in the end, it's just a game. A game that, with its leaderboards, has brought millions of gamers alike together for what would become, arguably, the greatest game on the Xbox Live Arcade. The game that defined the Xbox 360's launch, and is easily at the top of my list of games that I can just pick up and play. Joshuknightus, signing off.